Hello and welcome back to the Elite Football Show. My name is Hayder and I'm your host as usual today. You know what, Kieran? Every time I watch that intro video, Ali, we're both United fans. Every time I see Liverpool lifting that trophy, it's so difficult.
Oh, I was going to
Every
say
single
something.
time.
I was going to say something different there. I was like, every time I hear that McTominay goal, I just get goosebumps and go back to Beaton City.
But it just kills it because at the end, then you see Liverpool lifting the title for the first time in 3 years. But we've got our weekly show this week. We've changed it up a little bit. We're going to be bringing on a brilliant guest every single week to talk some football with us because I think it gets a bit boring. It's just me and Kieran. So, Kieran, my regular co-host, how are you doing today, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Hopefully, a better result at the weekend will kind of lighten the mood for a lot of United fans.
Absolutely. And I've got Ali Tweedale, who is the lead writer at Coach's Voice, an absolutely fantastic platform or site, which everyone should go and check out because the insight is brilliant. Ali, you obviously cover Spurs a little bit more. Are you still on a high from that absolute drubbing the other week?
Yeah, I think I will be for quite a while, to be honest. I'm still not at all convinced by Jose Mourinho, but that was a big step towards kind of some more kind of positive feeling. I think it's hard for Spurs fans to accept Mourinho after Poch because we just loved him so much. But I mean, you can't really complain too much after a result like that the other week.
Exactly. I want to tap into that a little bit more, actually, a little bit later on, because I've spoken to a few Spurs fans as well on the podcast, and they have that same sort of feeling. So we can definitely tap into that later. But guys, before we go on, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can see that in the bottom left-hand corner. We've moved it from the middle because then you won't be able to see Ali's name. So make sure you do that. Let's just jump straight into it, guys. And the agenda today is we're going to talk about the winners and the losers so far of the season. So we're going to pick 3 each, and then we're just going to go through them. And then we'll talk about 3 weekend fixtures. We'll talk about Everton versus Liverpool, which is probably the biggest Merseyside derby that we will see in years, or we have seen in years. We'll talk about City versus Arsenal, because that's a big game. And then Ali's obviously covers Spurs in more depth, so we'll do a Spurs versus West Ham. Ali, I'll start with you. Let's talk about your first winner of the season. It's been a crazy start, hasn't it? I mean, you look at the top of the table. Who would have thought Everton and Villa would be sitting there? Villa after a 7-2 thrashing the Liverpool, which made United's defeat a tiny bit, a little bit more sort of, I guess, taking the edge off it. I don't know because I'm still hurting a bit. But talk to me about your first winner of the season.
Well, I guess the first thing to say about this whole kind of subject is that it is a small sample size, isn't it? And like there are always teams that overperform in this small kind of in that first bit before the first international break. But that said, you can't really take too much away from Everton. They're my first winner of the season, and just the way they've clicked so quickly. The signings just look to be perfect for what Ancelotti wants. I think he's struck a really nice balance with James Rodriguez on the right, sort of tucking in, coming in onto his left foot, and Richarlison even playing higher than Dominic Calvert-Lewin a lot of the time, making runs, pinning the opposition right back. It just looks really great. And then they've got signed Allen in central midfield and Abdoulaye Doucouré as well. They've got and they just make sure that they've got two players sitting in central midfield. The 2 centre backs obviously go nowhere. Fullbacks bombing really high, and it just looks like it's really working. I mean, like I said, it is a small sample size. It is only 4 games, but they have looked really good.
One question I want to ask you, Ali, because I did a podcast when Ancelotti joined. I watched a lot of Serie A, massive Ancelotti fan. I would have taken him after Sir Alex. I would have taken him after Moyes, or taken him after Van Gaal, after Jose. I would have taken him. But he did really struggle at Napoli. A lot of things unraveled. De Laurentiis is notoriously difficult to deal with. Very difficult. We all know that, whether it's buying players or whether it's actually being under him. But also, he's a fantastic owner. I mean, he's done some fantastic stuff for Napoli. But he looked a little bit like his stock was low. He joined Everton. He probably would have taken the Arsenal job if that was offered to him. But it seems to me, and I've said this, yes, it's a small sample size, but Leicester City a few years ago obviously won the Premier League. This Everton side is stronger than the Leicester side. The manager's better. The team's got more balance to it. Everton aren't playing any European football. They could really surprise a few people this season, couldn't they?
Yeah, Definitely. And I do think, yeah, you're right about Ancelotti's stock kind of falling a little bit. But what I think has worked for him with Everton is he's come into a club that is looking to break into the top four, and they're kind of matching his ambitions. And you've got a manager who can convince players like James Rodriguez to come. And then you've got a club who are willing to back him with that. And that has just really worked. And he wanted Alan from Napoli, and they went out and got him. As to whether they can spring a surprise, I definitely think they could. This is what's so crazy is it looks like this is just going to be a season of complete inconsistency. So if you get a team that can spring a surprise, who knows what they'll manage to do. I don't know if we'll ever see something like Leicester. I don't see Everton winning the league or anything like that. But if they put a bit of a run together, who knows? They could be challenging for the top four of the European places for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Kieran, what's your first winner? I'm assuming it's someone from Everton as well, because I know there's one player in particular that you keep on harping on about in the fantasy football show.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to look past Everton. So for me, I'm gonna go with that and with Calvert-Lewin, because again, the fact is he's been scoring very, very easily this season. He comes on, gets his first England cap and scores for England as well. So for me, I think he's probably benefited the most from a lot of these kind of new signings that have come in from Everton, and also with Ancelotti coming in, because he looks a completely different player under Ancelotti. So really, I think he's probably the biggest winner in terms of if you're looking at that Everton side and how it's kind of transformed over the last 12 months. I think he's a key catalyst for that team.
Yeah, I agree. What's impressed you particularly, Kieran? Because I'll be honest, I thought Calvert-Lewin was decent. There were links of 45 to 50 million pound move to United. I mean, United are linked to everyone, so I wouldn't really take too much sort of stock of that. But we looked at Calvert-Lewin last season, scored some important goals. For me, I never thought he would really take this much of a step up. Yes, as Ali said, very small sample size. We've got to keep our feet grounded. But he's now broken his way into the England squad. He looks like a very difficult player to play against. What in particular has he improved for you?
For me, I just feel like he's become more of a nuisance in the box, that he's that target player that when you have James Rodriguez wanting to cross the ball in, that he's always the first one to the ball. Like, you've seen him kind of bully defenders early on in the first couple of games, and it's something you didn't tend to see him do a lot. I remember early on at Everton, you'd almost see him more out on the wing than kind of getting into the box and being that kind of focal point for Everton. But now you see with James Rodriguez, with Richarlison, that they're kind of playing that more wide role, and it's allowing him to basically just get into the box and score those scruffy goals. I think there was one where it was either James Rodriguez or Richarlison took the shot, but it may have been go wide and he taps it in, because he's in those positions when before I don't think he was. And I think that's the biggest impact that Ancelotti has had on him, is the way he wants him to play. Well, before he was always a good footballer, but you didn't see that kind of finishing instinct from him. But now you see he's a nuisance in the box, especially when the ball's going in. He's one of the first to kind of get his head on it. And now you're just seeing him in the right positions to where he can score goals. I think he's proven this season that so far his finishing is up there with a lot of other strikers in the Premier League. So, and again, he's still a very young player, so he's only going to improve over the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, very fair points. Guys, I'm going to round off the sort of Everton theme at the moment, because you can't really look past them. They are the best side currently on form, the way they've been playing. 4 wins out of 4. But I'm going to talk about Doucouré, because for me, it puzzles me that no other top 6 side went for him. When I watched him at Watford, he always stood out. Engine in midfield, tenacious. I think he carries the ball well as well. And I think he's actually that key to that side. James is a beautiful player. We all know that. He's done fantastically well. Alan, I watched a lot of him at Napoli. I actually thought he declined a little bit in the last few years, but he looks like an excellent player again. But Doucouré, for me, is the one that knits everything together. Without that energy in midfield, I don't think you could play James out on that right. I don't think you probably could have just Alan sitting. So for me, he's been the signing of the season so far. I know some people will laugh at that, but for 20 million, I think any of the top 6 could have gone for him. Spurs could have, United definitely could have. Liverpool probably okay, but Arsenal could have gone for him as well. Obviously, they signed parties, so that would be my player of the season so far. Ali, I'm going to come to you for the second winner. Who are you choosing?
Dean Smith, who I think the job he's done at Villa has gone a bit under the radar. The team that he brought up was good, but it wasn't a Premier League quality team, and the team he kept up was good, but it wasn't great or anything. But he's improved that team. He's found the space. He's identified the spaces they needed to improve, and he's bought really, really well. And I think what he's also done is he's bought players. My doorbell just went. Sorry.
That's all right, no problem.
He's bought players that were playing well. So players like Matty Cash, who and Ollie Watkins, who are kind of like on the upwards trajectory, and he's just gonna they're gonna just ride the wave of that form. I don't think that the Liverpool game, is really going to mean much, but they've won 3 out of 3, and that's actually quite a big step towards survival. And they've only played 3 games. I don't think they've done it or anything, but they've that's 25% of the points you need to stay up already.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really surprised what I've seen. I liked Dean Smith when he was at Brentford. I thought they're such a good side to watch. And then obviously going over to Villa, got promoted. He's obviously a Villa fan. But what surprised me the most actually is Grealish signing a new contract, if I'm being honest. That's because as United fans, obviously we were linked with him heavily, and I really, really wanted him. He's exactly, I think, what United need. When United get pressed high, they really struggle. We all know that. And I think Grealish would have been the perfect player to sort of carry the ball, progressive ball carrier, getting fouled, slowing the game down. And the 80 million price tag was pretty crazy. But did that surprise you that he was signing such a long deal? Because does that suggest to you he's going to stay, or is that just a way of preserving his value?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because he will have been offered more money than he could have ever dreamt of earning, and he's playing for his boyhood club. So you can't really criticize him for it. But I do kind of wonder if he's sort of priced himself out of a move now, in the same way that Wilfried Zaha signed that 5-year deal at Palace, had a slightly less good season. And then now no one's going to pay 80 million for Wilfried Zaha. And he's got 3.5 years left on his contract, and he'll be 32 or something by the time that runs out. And with Grealish, he's obviously a fair bit younger, but he's worth so much more to Villa than he is to any other club. So Villa won't sell him for less than 60 million. But would United spend 60, 70 million on Jack Grealish when you can get Donny van der Beek, because someone at that level who's already played a Champions League semi-final for 40? I don't really know. And I wonder if Grealish might come to regret that in a few years, because I definitely feel like Zaha will regret his decision.
Yeah, fantastic points. I mean, I think myself and Kieran have spoken about this a lot since we saw the signing of the new contract. It kind of says to me that, well, I think that Pogba's going to leave at the end of the season or in a couple of years. And I just think Jack Grealish is a perfect replacement. But like you said, will United spend 80 million on Grealish? I don't know. I don't think that's probably feasible. But Kieran, who is your winner of the season?
My second one is probably Leeds, because they've had a pretty difficult start to the season, having to play against Liverpool and Man City, and they dealt with it pretty well. They were unlucky not to get anything out of the Liverpool game. I thought they played excellently well. When you give away 2 penalties in the game, you're kind of destroying yourself, but I thought they played really well. Then it looked like they were going to get ripped apart by Man City, but at halftime they kind of came in and Bielsa gathered the team together, and they performed much better in the second half and ended up getting the point out of it. And I just think that they've been one of those teams that everyone expected to do well, but when you looked at the start of their schedule, it was a difficult one to see where all the points are going to come from. And the fact that they got through that part of the of their kind of schedule where you're looking at a lot of the big teams they're playing against. I know they got Sheffield United as well, and they were a bit lucky to come away with that. But I just think overall they've been very impressive coming up. I've said it before. I don't think they're a prototypical championship team coming into the Premier League. You can see that they're not going to be a team that has to worry. When you look at the others like Fulham or West Brom, where you probably would have a lot of fans of those teams that are quite anxious about their kind of prospects for this season, I don't think Liverpool or Leeds fans should be feeling that way. They should be very relaxed in the way that they've played, and they've actually done a little bit better defensively in the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks than they did against Liverpool to start the season. So for me, they would be one of my winners. To go back and kind of the comment about Villa with Grealish, I think it is very similar to Wilfried Zaha. You've seen it now. He's wanted to leave to go to, I think there was the links to Dortmund and everything. While Jack Grealish loves Villa, I think he had to sign a contract to kind of get rid of all those links from before. Because remember, before the end of the season, there was those reports saying that he was already thinking of leaving, and his agent had to come out and completely dismiss them. So I think him signing a new contract is probably also trying to alleviate the kind of fan base where they wouldn't kind of get on top of him as well.
Yeah, what I will add to Grealish is that I do think, just my opinion, that if Villa had been relegated, he probably would have been one of United's first signings through the door. I think it was a nice fit there, and Van de Beek's a fantastic player. I'm really excited, but they're just in some ways their strengths are each other's weaknesses. Van de Beek's fantastic off the ball, his movement, his spatial awareness. I think Grealish is better on the ball. He's a better dribbler. So two fantastic players, but yeah, two different players. But United have got a good deal. Ali, I want to come to you about Leeds because Bielsa's fantastic, isn't he?
Yeah, he's amazing. He's just so fascinating, isn't he? He's he's not done an interview in 23 years or something like that. He's just not like any other manager. It's just brilliant. I mean, it's a bit of a shame for us because I'd love to interview him. It would be amazing to hear him talk about all the brilliant work he's done. But yeah, he's really it's just so great to see someone who just cares about football so much. And he said before that he thinks that there's something that's more important than winning, and that's the feeling between the club and the players and the fans. And that's just so nice. That's just such an amazing thing. Obviously, everyone wants to win. Obviously, everyone would love to win the Premier League, and but there is something to say for that amazing feeling between the team and the connection between team and fans. Something that Tottenham had under Pochettino, who obviously is a disciple of Bielsa himself.
Yeah, fantastic points. I did a really, really great podcast, I think after the Liverpool game, with Baron Cross, who works for Leeds Live, and he was saying to me that, as you said, getting an interview with him, he just won't do one-on-one interviews. That's just not the way he is. And he treats everyone fairly. I think that's fantastic. And you talk more about that sort of romantic side of football, right? You know, the way that we want football to be. And myself and Kieran, we did a podcast yesterday about Project Big Picture. And we were just talking about how some of the boys were saying how, football is helping the lower teams, but it's about money, isn't it? And that's the problem with football these days. It's all about money, the intentions. But Bielsa's sort of a throwback to when football was, played on rough pitches. The ball was really heavy. I don't know. I think he's fantastic. But something he did say is that he lives above a sweet shop, I believe, on the outskirts of Leeds.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and he just has like screens everywhere in his flat. And he just football crazy, and I think that's amazing. And something which really does make me admire him more is the fact that when he picks his sides, like you said, he tries to find a place where the city and the fans, the club, there's this connection. He probably wouldn't go and work at United, probably, I don't think, because he never had. You look at his CV, Lazio, Marseille's another one, obviously a few teams in Argentina, but massive fan. I hate Leeds with a passion, but I can't hate Bielsa, so it's a difficult one. I enjoy watching Bielsa's sides play, but my winner is going to be someone also at Leeds, and it's going to be Patrick Bamford. Surprisingly, He's someone.
We have we've got a problem here.
Oh, you put Bamford. I'll let you go with Bamford.
No, you go.
I'll go first. So Bamford's a funny one because I think complete confidence player. If you look at his time at Leeds, obviously Bielsa likes him a lot, but I think he scores in bursts. I just didn't expect him to come and settle into the Premier League so well. But for me, he scored a goal against Liverpool, which is massive. I believe he didn't score against City. I don't think he scored against. I can't remember who he scored against. But he's scored quite a few goals. He's looked hungry. He's looked confident. And with Rodrigo coming in as well, marquee signing, you'd have thought, right, Bamford's placed under threat. How is he going to cope with it? I think he's taken that step up. So for me, I've been very impressed with him. I'm still waiting for the sort of the performances to drop, and I'm waiting for the confidence to go. But what a great start, and I think he's really repaid Bielsa's face. So Ali, I'll let you talk about Bielsa as well in a bit. Bamford in a bit more depth.
I completely agree with what you said already, Haider. But I do think that the thing with Bamford is that the criticism of him has always been that he doesn't score enough. And he hasn't really scored enough over the course of his entire career. But then he's coming to the Premier League. He does exactly what Bielsa wants from his centre forward. He works so hard. You just see him making shuttle runs between centre backs constantly over and over and over again. And he just keeps working so hard. And now he's added goals to that. He got 3 in his first 3 games back in the Premier League. So yeah, I'm quite pleased for him really, because he gets a lot of stick. He's had a lot of stick over the years just for being a striker that doesn't score. But yeah, I don't think he's not going to score 25 goals or carry on at this rate or anything. But if he can hold off, give competition for Rodrigo, then he's done a good job.
He's very much in the Firmino mold, isn't he? I mean, I'm not the biggest Roberto Firmino fan, but anyone that does understand Klopp's tactics will realize he is an important asset. The way he drops deep, the way that the 2 wingers go from out to in. He does need to score more, but Firmino is still very integral to the way Liverpool play, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting with how Leeds set up is they go basically man for man when they don't have the ball, but they always want an overload in defence. So that means Bamford's 1 against 2 up front, and he's just runs himself into the ground. It just looks like a pretty thankless task, to be honest, but yeah, he does it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ali, have you got a third one off the top of your head, or am I putting you on the spot?
Well, Bamford was mine. We could go with Heung-min Son.
Yeah, you got to go for one of the Spurs guys at least.
where my brain goes instantly. So sorry about that. But yeah, he's had a really, really good start to the season. He works so well with Harry Kane, and I think Kane's kind of moved to a bit of a more withdrawn role is really, really helping Son out. Son's one of those players that's just kind of crazy that he's never ever been linked with a properly elite club, which Tottenham aren't. And there are so many players that have been bought who do what Son does for kind of crazy money. Like Nicola Pepe for Arsenal is a not dissimilar player, an inside forward who cuts in and scores lots of goals. 72 million. That would mean Son's worth about 150. But maybe 3 years ago, Barcelona could have come in for him and got him for less than they signed Ousmane Dembele for. But just was never talked about. Really weird, but he's such a good player.
I completely agree. I remember him at Bayer Leverkusen, I believe it was, wasn't it? And United, I remember the whole Park Ji-sung, okay, we're going to sign, because Park was a quality player, but he also had his limitations. Now, Son is quality, though. You have the whole thing where, United signed Dong because he was going to, that sounds really wrong, but yeah, they signed Dong because he's going to sell shirts. And I hate that sort of idea, because people say that, we're going to sign a player from America, so that it's rubbish. But Son's genuinely class, isn't he? I mean, I would say I've always said that if United wanted a new winger, they go for Son.
Yeah, definitely. He also ticks that superstar box in Korea. He is actually one of the most famous people in that, or sports people in that country. He's an absolute hero. So yeah, he's very marketable as well.
Which is basically a Glazer's wet dream.
And is what these us romantics want, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the best of both worlds. He's a world-class footballer, but he's also a marketing just dream. But Kieran, who is your third winner of the season so far?
The third one, I went through two. In terms of for actual kind of games played, I would say Jamie Vardy. If you're going to say something different based on how bad United have been, I'd probably say Mauricio Pochettino. But again, let's go with Vardy because he actually played. I think, again, it just seems like he gets better the older he gets. And he doesn't tend to slow down, which is a weird one for a player that plays the way that he does. You can see a lot of strikers that can last a long time if they're kind of big forces. You see the likes of Diego Costa, where he doesn't have to do too much running. He just needs to get into those positions where he can be dangerous. But Vardy's the complete opposite. You would think that he would be kind of a 24 or 25-year-old because he doesn't look like he's lost a step. And he's still able to, even after all these years for Leicester, he's still the one player that everybody targets and still can't stop. And that's a big issue for opposing defenses, I guess. But again, for Jamie Vardy and for Leicester, the fact that he's still able to contribute the goals that he does. And I know he was out for a long period of last season and still was one of the top scorers in the league last year. If he wasn't injured, he probably would have been the top scorer. And you look at him this year, even with some of the crazy performances we've seen from Son, we've seen from Calvert-Lewin, he's still only a goal behind. And you wouldn't have expected that because there has been one or two games this year where you don't look at Leicester as being that kind of dominant force, but then you see them against Man City and you're like, they can catch these big teams on the break. So they know how to play. And they're one of the teams that I think actually plays as a team. The issue they have is they go through so many forms of inconsistency. So they'll have a good 8-9 week period where they'll win most games, but then they're that team that could go 6 weeks without winning. And that's the biggest issue for them as a team. But for Jamie Vardy, it's really as he goes is the same way Leicester go.
Yeah, fantastic points. Ali, have you got anything to add regarding Jamie Vardy?
I'm a big fan of Jamie Vardy. I know everyone gets really annoyed when people retire from international football because it's like if you ever have the chance to play for your country, you should jump at it. But you've got to respect Jamie Vardy for doing that. He wasn't happy being a sub for England. He was never going to move Harry Kane aside, and he's going to play into his mid-30s in the Premier League and for a top side and keep on scoring goals. So yeah, I'm a big fan of him.
I think you've got to look at the human element as well. He's 33 years old, so sitting on the bench, being away from the family. I know that sounds. I know some people don't want to hear that, but that is the reality. Why would he do that when he can spend some quality time with his family? He's not getting any younger, and to preserve his career. I mean, like Kieran said as well, he's just got better. I'm a massive fan. I would have loved to have seen him at a bigger club, but actually, what he's done at Leicester is completely unrivaled. I can't remember of a player who's been that consistent at a non-top six side. But for me, look, I toyed with the idea for my winner with Mourinho. I know that's you can't do that as a United fan, but look, I think Jose's done a really good job. I think Spurs have bought well, but I didn't choose him. Kane was another one, but Ali went with Son. So I'm going to go with another Leicester player, and I'm going to go with Castagne because I think when you look at, I want to look at it from different angles. Let's start with the deal itself, 27 million or around about that mark. Great deal for every single party. Atalanta, he was essentially a rotation player, so Atalanta got a fantastic fee for him. As well, Atalanta have got a great manager, great academy. Everything about Atalanta is just football. It's just beautiful. But then you look at as well Leicester selling Chilwell for around 50 million, which again was great business for Leicester. I think Chelsea spent a lot, but it wasn't obviously the 80 that United spent on Maguire. And also the way he settled down. You saw him against England the other day. He was fantastic. And he just fits exactly the way Rodgers wants his fullbacks to play. And I think that's the most impressive thing for me, is that Leicester's recruitment is very, very good. They're not like, let's say, United, where they're going to go and buy a big name. They're buying players that will suit the roles that Rodgers expects from his players. For example, his fullbacks, he wants them to get forward. He wants them to be an attacking outlet. And the fact that Ricardo Pereira hasn't played, for me, probably the most balanced right back in the league in terms of attack and defence. I think Castagne has been brilliant, and he's really taken to the league very, very comfortably. I'm quite intrigued to see where he plays. Ali, I'm going to bring you in on Castagne, because obviously he is right-footed, but when Ricardo Pereira does come back, he's probably going to get shifted to the left. But then Justin's been fantastic, so Leicester have options, don't they?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I wondered if Castagne's future is at left back. Ricardo's brilliant. I think he could play for any team in the Premier League. And I quite wanted Spurs to get him a few years ago. So yeah, maybe Castagne is out on the left, but it's good to have options, isn't it? James Justin is really, really good and will get better, but you maybe don't want to rely on him for 38 games. So if he can get 15 starts this season, then great. But I think it will be Castagne and Ricardo that are first choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran, I'm going to bring you in on Castagne because we've spoken about him several times, but there's some gems in Europe. And when you see it, how some of the clubs operate, it just boggles your mind a little bit, doesn't it? And he's definitely one which, I know it's early days, again, small sample size, but he's one that a lot of bigger sides could have looked at as options, because fullbacks, I think for me, the quality is very up and down. I think at the top bracket, you've got some real quality, but fullbacks, because the role has changed and evolved, they're expected to go forward more. You look at Wan-Bissaka, for example, fantastic defender, but going forward is something which he needs to work on. And it's very hard to find a player that can do both. And I think Castagne does them pretty well.
Yeah, I guess that goes to the point of what we talk about quite often, that clubs shouldn't be bashed if they bring in a player that fans don't watch on a weekly basis, because there's a lot of good players out in Europe. You've seen Castagne. There's been others that we've seen come into the Premier League. Like, even if we just kind of go back to Everton, when for the last 2 or 3 seasons, I think James Rodriguez has been offered to top Premier League clubs and they've rejected it. And you see the same way when you mentioned with Decore, who was at Watford, who should have been gone somewhere else in the past couple of seasons. But you see, just when somebody fits a style of play very, very well, you see what Castagne has been able to do. He does exactly what he's been asked. And the one thing is, it's not a bad thing that they're going to have Castagne, Pereira, and then also have Justin, because it allows them to kind of tweak with formations as well, depending on the team that they want to play against. Do they want to play a more attacking style against a team that maybe they're not going to get a lot of the ball? Or if you're going to counter attack, are you going to pick your 2 kind of fastest wing backs? Now, I think, like Ali said there, I don't think you can drop Pereira. He's too good. He's probably, if you're looking at an overall right back, he's probably the best one in the Premier League. People will say Trendy, his attacking is amazing, but defensively there's still a lot of questions to ask. And you look at Wan-Bissaka and it's the opposite. Defensively he's brilliant, but offensively he needs to kind of improve on that area of the game. And there's not many, you even think about it in kind of European football in general, there's not many right backs that can do both. And so the minute Pereira comes back, he has to be put back in, but it's going to be hard for them to drop Castagne after how he's played. But again, I guess if Pereira needs a little bit of time to come back because he has been injured, it's always good to have that other option where you can rotate them in certain games. So you're not overloading your wing backs, which is a very important part of the way that they play.
Yeah, fantastic points. Definitely, I completely agree. Guys, let's move on to the losers. You could just put all of United in there, but I'm going to let you guys do that. Ali, I'm going to start with you. Who has been the biggest loser of the season so far?
Well, when you phrase it like that, I think there's only really one answer. I'm sorry, but it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He just, it's always looked a bit of a questionable decision, and the kind of romanticism that United fans have has ended up hurting him, because he got United playing in a way that was very much, and I use these inverted commas as seriously as possible, the United way. He got them playing that way, and everyone kind of thought, right, well, this is it. We're back. We're playing the way that we should play, and it just wasn't sustainable. It was a purple patch. It was just the crest of a wave, and it's shown this season. And you really have to wonder if he is the person that can get these players. There are plenty of good players there. You really have to wonder if he is the person that can get these players playing as well as they possibly can. There's been reports that the players like him, but are unconvinced that he is a top, properly elite manager. And if you lose that bit of confidence with properly elite players, that can be a real problem. I think he has to get Donny van de Beek in the team, and he's been a bit cautious with that. He wasn't cautious with Bruno Fernandes, and it worked. I think he's got to he needs to find a way to get him into the team. But I don't really know if he's going to be able to do that, if he's going to be bold enough to do that.
I completely agree. Look, myself and Kieran, I'll bring him in after Ali, but we're very similarly aligned on what we think about United. But I think for me, I had doubts about Oli in December of last year when he was on the brink of getting sacked. I think the way I see it is that he came in and did a phenomenal job. He lifted the spirits. United jumped the gun with appointing him, because I always wanted Pochettino, and we can bring in Pochettino and your thoughts on him in a second. But gave him the contract. Obviously, the form dropped. Had a summer where they spent big. They didn't give him Bruno early, and that's the problem. A lot of it does also fall on the board, but the way I look at it, the board and the Glazers, Woodward are the reasons why United aren't challenging for top honours. But what goes on the pitch is purely the manager's responsibility. Looking at that squad, Pogba, Bruno, Van der Beek, Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, defence is a bit of a problem. We know that. But that quality there, as you say, a top manager would get a lot out of that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. There's just, if you just look at the striker, the attack, so sort of taking the midfielders' attacking potential, that's one of the best sort of lineups in Europe. It's got the potential to be. So yeah, I completely agree. It should be a squad that can blow teams away. Finding the balance between defence and attack, another question. But yeah, I do agree.
You talk about Van der Beek. Where would you be playing him? Because he scored again last night. He has to start. I completely agree. Myself and Kieran have been saying Pogba is quality, but he's not right. Obviously, he's had COVID. He just doesn't look right. I'd be putting him in there in the midfield with Matic and Bruno. But what would you do? What would work best in terms of balance?
It's hard to say. I think it would obviously be depending on the opposition. But I wonder if you go for a narrow diamond and play Fred at the base, Pogba and Van der Beek on either side, Bruno ahead, and then two of Martial, Rashford and Greenwood up top. It seems like the most obvious choice, but you also there are definitely going to be games when you want to have all three of Rashford, Martial and Greenwood in the team. But yeah, you can change it from game to game, can't you?
Yeah, and I think with Telles coming in, the thing about the diamond is you need your fullbacks to be excellent going forward. And with Wan-Bissaka, you just know that's something which he doesn't really excel in, something he can improve, I hope. But that's why the Dalot sort of loaning out really just puzzles me, because he's someone who does excel. I know Kieran really doesn't like Dalot, so we're not going to go into Dalot too much, because this is an area we really disagree. But I think Dalot has qualities. He's not as good as everyone. No, I think he has qualities. We're not going to talk about Dalot. Kieran, I'm going to bring you in on Oli, because look, it's just gonna, if United lose against Newcastle, it's just gonna explode again, isn't it? United are in a very precarious position. Serious questions have to be asked about Oli, and I think everything Ali said, as a non-United fan, so he can give a more of an objective view, is very fair, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fair. I think the way it worked out was, and it happens quite a lot, is when a team goes through a toxic period. I've seen it with a lot of sports teams that I follow, that the next manager that comes in needs to be able to fix the culture within the club. And that's what they saw Ali do. And that's what he was initially brought in for. He wasn't going to be brought in for the long term. But when you have the results that he did, if you don't give him a long term contract, then the problem is the players start tuning him out when the results don't go so well, because they're like, you're not going to be the manager here anyway, so why should I listen to you? That's a big issue. And part of it is to do with that, but also you couldn't deny that it wasn't just like a 5 or 6 game stretch. It was, I can't remember, was it 12, 13 games that they were winning? And it's hard for a club not to reward someone when the results are that good. The issue has always been, I've mentioned this to you, I have never really been a person to say he needs to get sacked, because I've always seen him as kind of the middle piece, to where he's going to take you to a certain point and then you're going to bring in another manager and they're going to take you to win. The one that I always kind of bring this to, and a lot of kind of American fans would know this, is with the Chicago Cubs, who won their first World Series in like 100 and something years. They had a lot of young players come through, and they had an older manager that was initially in, that brought them to a certain level. But then when they knew they were ready to compete, they fired him and brought in a winning manager, and then ended up winning the championship. I see a lot of similarities with United right now, is that they have a very young team. Like you look at the average age, and I think last year it was the youngest team in the Premier League.
24 years old, I believe.
Exactly. So I think Solskjaer has gotten to the point where I think he can get them as far as he can. And even if it's not during the season, because look, as a United fan, I hope their results improve and I hope their performances do. It would make more sense if we were able to play well and get through this season. But then after this season, I think you do probably have to change it, because you need to have someone in there that can maximize all the talents of the players that you have and can bring you to that next level. The reason why I've always kind of gravitated towards Pochettino is because you're then not going to a different style of manager. That's the main reason. I would be really annoyed if we got rid of Solskjaer and brought someone in that would bring in a completely different system, because what Solskjaer has done is he's recruited quite well in the time that he's been here. People will argue about Harry Maguire, but yes, he's had a terrible start to the season. But last season, he was very consistent for United. And I think I mentioned this before. There's a lot of people forget how bad that defense was before they brought in Wan-Bissaka and Harry Maguire. You've seen some of the players that they brought through, and you have to give him credit. He's the one that brought Greenwood through. I keep harping on about this because there were reports in that last season that if Jose Mourinho was still manager of Manchester United, Greenwood would not be at Manchester United, because after the pre-season, when he basically slagged off the young players, Greenwood started looking for a different club because they weren't sure if he was going to get his opportunities. In comes Solskjaer, and he gives opportunities to young players, which is needed at a club like Manchester United. The reason I like Pochettino is because the way he played with Tottenham was excellent. There's always going to be critics that'll say he didn't win anything. Well, look, nobody else won anything at Tottenham either. So you have to look at how they played, and that's how I want to see United play. And I don't think it's too different to what Solskjaer currently does with the club. So I don't think it'll be a huge kind of culture shock if that change did happen.
Yeah, fantastic points. Ali, I'm going to bring you in on Pochettino because you absolutely love Pochettino. But so talk to me. It's sort of a two-part question. Talk to me about, do you think Pochettino would be a good fit at United? Because I agree with Kieran. He says I always look at Oli as A to B. United was toxic after Jose. and it needed to be cleaned up, the mess. I think Ollie's done a pretty good job of that, and people don't give him enough credit. But I feel there's a ceiling, and I think he might have hit it. The backroom problems, the board not backing him, etc. That's other issues. But realistically, Pochettino, I think, is a better manager. So talk to me about whether you think he'd be a good fit, whether you think it's going to happen. And secondly, what does Pochettino mean to you as a Spurs fan?
Oof, how long have we got?
The stage is yours.
Do I think he'd be a good fit? Yeah, I mean, maybe I just hold him in such high regard that I think he could work anywhere. I think there is a part of him that likes the kind of project and taking a sort of smaller club to a better place. So maybe in that sense he's not as much of a good fit for United. But I also think now he's at a stage where he thinks he's untouchable in the eyes of world football. And if there's an opportunity to go to one of the biggest clubs in the world, I think he'll take it. So I think he could work. I think he could work anywhere. I definitely think he could get a better tune out of those players than Solskjaer is doing. He could improve a lot of those players, and he'd also garner more respect than Solskjaer. I think just he'd go in and people would know we can't mess around with this guy. If someone steps out of line with Pochettino, they're out of the door. And I think maybe Solskjaer's a bit too much of a nice guy in that sense. What does he mean to me or to Tottenham fans? He's a complete god. He's just. I think everyone already, not yet, but there was a comment he made about he would like to one day come back, and Spurs fans are already excited about that. That's how high in esteem he's held in for Spurs.
I want to just get your quick view on Jose Mourinho as well, because myself and Kieran have experienced Jose Mourinho. I love Jose Mourinho. I still really like him. I wanted him at United very early on, but for what we saw at United, from what I'm seeing on the outside, he's getting backed probably, I don't know about better, but he is getting the players. I mean, he's got Gareth Bale. I know Bale hasn't exactly been playing that much, but he's got the players he necessarily wanted. It seems, you look at the documentary, I know it's heavily edited, but him and Levy have a decent relationship. He's got less pressure on him now as well. He's not necessarily expected to win the league. So in that sense, he's in a different environment, but he's the one coming in with the we got to win sort of mentality. Are you sort of slowly warming to him? Because I've spoken to a few Spurs fans and they're struggling. There's two camps. Some are really, they just want to win a trophy. A few other Spurs fans are just still, this is not really what we were under Poch. It seems like a short-termism. So talk to me a bit about your feelings on Jose.
Yeah, I'm definitely coming round to him. The aim for Tottenham has to be to win something. And it has been for a while. If we become completely turgid, the football's just rubbish, but he wins the League Cup with 4 1-0 wins en route to the or penalty shootout wins all the way to it, that would be a success. That would immediately make his appointment a success. That's the state that Tottenham are in. That's the level they're at. I'm definitely warming to him. I don't like, so as you saw in the documentary, and we've always known, it's all about him. He wants to be front and center of the stage, and I don't like that. I like the Bielsa kind of wanting to just let the players be the ones that are getting all the attention. Mourinho wants it to all be about him. He's the one standing there when United won the Europa League with his 4 fingers up or whatever, just trying to make it about him. And that wasn't about him. That was about Manchester United. So I don't think he will ever be a true Tottenham hero. But I'd like to be proved wrong.
Yeah, because it works for you then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think a lot of you will have when he does go, you will have a section of your fan base that will just love Mourinho, and we have that in our fan base, Kieran, and it's genuinely frustrating because then they wait for Oli to slip up so they can go, oh well, Jose's done this, and yeah, just be prepared for that because every single fan base seems to have these Jose Mourinho cultists. I said a rude word the other day about them, so I'm not going to say that again. But Kieran knows what I said about them. But Kieran, I'm going to come to you about your, I think it was loser, wasn't it? Yeah, loser of the season.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go away from United. I was just going to say Harry Maguire because of his poor form, but again, I think we've spoken enough about them. So I'm going to go with Fulham, because I think they look worse than when they were in the Premier League the last time. And I don't know if it's going to get much better for them. I don't see enough there to say that they can succeed in the Premier League long term. And it's an issue because they were one of those teams that I used to love watching when they had the likes of Louis Saha and kind of Malbranc and all them. But the problem is, it's just, I don't know if it's just they haven't recruited well enough and haven't seen that, yes, they kind of got their way through the championship, but they needed to improve in that squad and they didn't. I feel a little sorry for manager because you look at them when they come up against some of the teams in the Premier League and you can see the different class between the teams. A lot of the games so far early in the season have reminded me of kind of a League Cup game where you see a Premier League team come up against a Championship team. And for me, I just think that they're in trouble this season. And unless something changes, whether it's something tactically or if the players start kind of just working harder together to try and kind of grind out some victories or get a couple points here and there, if they don't do it soon, like we said with Villa, as they were one of the teams that were close to getting relegated last year, and they already have got 3 wins under their belt. When you have teams like that winning early, the teams that start losing consistently early on are going to fall behind very, very quickly.
Yeah, fantastic points. And last thing I'll say on Fulham is that I would much prefer to see Brentford go up. Fulham for me are just up, down, and Brentford, they recruit fantastically well. New stadium. I don't live far from Brentford as well, so I would have been really nice to have seen. But my loser, look, it's a tough one to say, but I'm quickly going to touch on Chris Wilder. Not so much Chris Wilder because I really, really like him. I think he's a fantastic manager. What he did last season was brilliant, but I always felt that Sheffield United would have that sort of second season syndrome because of the fact they don't score enough goals, and if their defensive sort of output and performance has slipped, I just couldn't see how they'd be scoring enough goals to avoid losses or draws. And I just think they had to upgrade on McGoldrick and on McBurney. And I don't fear for them. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll manage to turn it around, but they need to somehow get more goals, turn up the defense again. So that would be my loser. I think we've got 2 more losers each, so we'll rattle through them quickly. Ali, who is your next loser?
Well, it's kind of linked to the Pochettino discussion, and it's Pep Guardiola, who it's always been said that he's incredibly intense, and that's why he can only ever do a maximum of 4 years at a club. He's already now been at City longer than he's ever been in any other role, and I don't think we can start saying that because they got thrashed by Leicester and they drew with Leeds that they're done. But I do wonder if he is coming towards the end of his time at City. And I also wonder if the Pochettino thing, I wonder if City's owners are thinking, do we want to sit on our heels and let Manchester United swoop in and get Pochettino? We miss out on him. And then suddenly you've got a team with ambitions to be the best team on the planet who have missed out on a truly elite manager who's out of work.
I completely agree. That is actually my biggest fear as a United fan. And I put it from the United spin. Do we want to let City go and get one of the elite managers who is available? I just think with Pep, it's uncharted waters now, isn't it? We don't know how he's going to do beyond that period. And that is completely correct. If you looked at Bayern Munich, he is so intense. The the players look weary. They look tired. I actually tipped City to win the league this season, but I don't think they've refreshed the squad enough. And for me, I just think Juve is just waiting for him in a year. I honestly do fear a lot that Pochettino will go to Man City, but I agree with that. I think Poch is a great Pep's a great shout. Kieran, who's your next loser?
My next loser is, and it's not so much just him, but it's Aaron Ramsdale for Sheffield United. And the main reason is because you come into a side from last year that had Dean Henderson and was one of the standout goalkeepers last year, and Ramsdale was brought in basically to try and do the same job that Henderson did, and you're kind of seeing that defense get a little bit overtaken. And it's weird because the defense and even midfielders for Sheffield haven't changed, but they're leaking way more than they were last season. And the only difference there is Ramsdale right now. I thought he played well for Bournemouth last year, and you would have expected that he would have been fine. But I guess it just goes to show just how good Dean Henderson was for Sheffield United. And if they keep losing, I think there's going to be more and more pressure being put on Ramsdale's shoulders.
Yeah, fantastic points. I agree with that. For me, I think Wolves have been a loser because they're not too far down the table. They're about 13th, I think. But looking at the summer business they've done, the trajectory that they're going to go on, or they're looking to go on in this project, I'm a little bit uninspired by what I've seen. I think they'll be there or thereabouts around the sort of top 8. But for me, I don't know if the progress is quick enough to their plan. Obviously, they've got that 10-year plan. I believe they're 5 years into it. So done fantastically well. But I feel like they've kind of hit a little bit of a buffer at the moment. I don't think they've progressed as much as I thought they would. A lot of great teams in the Premier League who are challenging for those top 6 positions. But I do think Everton have overtaken them for sure. And I expect a bit more small sample size. I think they'll be there or thereabouts, but they're a team which I thought would be a lot higher up the table than they are. But I do think United, City and Wolves are going to struggle with the fact they haven't had as much of a pre-season, match fitness. And once those 3 teams do get that up, I think that's a big factor that people are forgetting. Ali, what is your final loser?
West Brom, who I suppose it's a bit harsh because I already feared for them before this start to the season. And I don't really, and it's basically my opinion hasn't changed, but I just think that they're in trouble. I think, so I did a preview piece on them before the start of the season and found out that they only scored 1 goal on the counter-attack in the entire of last season. And I mean, they've if you don't do that as a team that's going to spend long periods defending, then you're in real trouble. They've scored way over their expected goals in their first few games. So I just don't think that they've got the goals in them to stay up. And then not only that, they've got the worst defence in the league, and they're just so I just don't think. I mean, Fulham look worse, and I completely agree with what Kieran was saying earlier. But I just don't see how West Brom is staying up.
Yeah, I completely agree. When I looked at them in the Championship, I think they conceded, was it 45 goals or something thereabouts? But that's pretty much, I believe, like a goal a game or something like that. So they weren't bad defensively, but they weren't also tight at the back. And it's quite funny because Bilic was actually a defender, so you would have thought maybe that they'd be better drilled in defence. But yeah, I agree with you. I think West Brom, although I have quite enjoyed watching them play. I thought they're all right going forward in terms of the way they play. They're better than watching Fulham. They're not sitting back, but I think they're going to go down. Kieran, who's your final loser of the season so far?
I think I slightly mentioned it earlier on. Just very quickly, was going to be Harry Maguire, and again, I don't think we need to go too far into it, but it's just I think he's had a really rough start to the season. He hasn't looked good for United. Because of everything that happened in Greece, didn't get to play earlier on for the England team, and then gets brought back in for the England team, gets sent off yesterday. I think it's just been a turbulent time for him, and a lot of people questioning kind of where he's at right now. So I think it's kind of an obvious loser from the start of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. Ali, I'm going to bring you in on Harry Maguire. something's not right, is it? I mean, we shouldn't obviously speculate too much, but he has to be taken out the firing line.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. He's a very good defender. He's proven that over the last couple of years. He's having a bad time at the moment, but players have bad runs of form. I think he'll come good again. I think you just need to. It's the kind of situation where you need a manager who's going to set his club up in their next game to protect him, and I don't know if that will happen. I don't think he needs to. I don't know what United would do if they didn't have Harry Maguire. I think he'll come good again.
I think he'll come good again. Me personally, I did a mental health and football podcast with a really great podcast called Man Marking yesterday. To all the listeners, make sure you check that out. That got released today at 11. We talked about mental health and football, and then we also talked about Maguire in the end. Obviously, we don't know what his mental state is, so it's not good to speculate. But what I will say on him as a United fan is that the pressure of being the most expensive centre-back, the captain, United are not playing well as well. And it's not just him. The whole back line's a mess at the moment. While I agree with you that United, what are the other options? I think he just needs to be taken out. And I think fans as well need to also understand that footballers are human beings. If something like that happened in Greece to one of our mates, we'd be like, look, mate, are you all right? We'd be doing something about it. And I think people forget this a little bit. I'm sure he's got a great support network, but I would agree he's definitely been a loser for me. And this one, I've got the final one, and this might be a little bit controversial, but I think Frank Lampard is a loser at the moment because I'll tell you why. Because when you spend that much money, I know it takes a bit of time for players to gel, but I expect better output, and I expect a manager to know how he wants to play with these players. I mean, he's obviously put these players forward, and what surprises is when he started the game against Brighton with Havertz out on the right, it's quite clear that he needs to play more centrally. I know he has done. I'm not sure he really knows what he wants to do with Timo Werner yet, whether he wants to play him up front alone or whether he's going to shift him to the left. Obviously, Pulisic's back. And I'm not sure he's got the midfield balance right. For me, Lampard is in the category perhaps of an Arteta and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, although I think Arteta, out of all the managers, has a tactical plan. He knows how he wants to set the team up. I'm not sure Lampard has the time to learn on the job. You have to remember it's his third season now as a manager in the top flight. Obviously, to the year at Derby. So I'm not sure whether he has the tactical nous yet to really get the most out of this Chelsea squad. So he'd be one of my losers, although I think you've got to look at it in context. A lot of other teams have been a lot worse. So we know that already. Ali, you got anything to add regarding Frank Lampard?
No, it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. Although I would say of all the losers that we've mentioned, he's probably the least loser of the bunch. But I kind of agree. He really wanted a defensive midfielder. I know he signed loads of players, and I'm not saying he needed to sign another player, but he did really want a defensive midfielder, a Declan Rice or someone like that. And I don't think that he is convinced that Jorginho can do that job. He's that sort of athletic and dynamic enough to do that job, the job that he wants in defensive midfield, and that might end up hurting him. I mean, you have to look at him with harshly, given how much he spent. So yeah, it's fair enough, really.
Kieran, I'm going to come to you quickly before we move on to our fixtures and predictions. But when you spend that much money, you have to challenge, in my opinion.
Yeah, when you spend close to 200 million in a transfer window, I think you don't really have any excuses because, again, you're the one that has given in your targets who you want to bring in. I think it was very obvious they wanted Declan Rice. I think if he thought the defensive midfield position was of that much importance, he probably needed to prioritize it then. You can't just, like, we see it with Chelsea. They must have bought, 8-9 players this year. And again, you have to challenge when you do that, especially when there's other teams that haven't spent as much this year, because you're seeing it with all the top teams. Even though you've seen that Liverpool, who brought in Thiago and Jota, and you've Man City, who brought in Ferran Torres and Ruben Diaz. It's not like they went out and spent 150 million to improve their squad, but Chelsea did. So if Chelsea don't improve from last season, which really there's only 3 places that they can get that can show that there's an improvement in the squad, then I think Lampard will be under a little bit of pressure, because any owner that goes out and spends a lot of money on their team and they don't see kind of tangible improvements, that's when the manager kind of comes under fire.
I think something else, sorry to jump in, I think something else to add on that, which is interesting. I read something on by Miguel Delaney on The Independent on Roman Abramovich recently. Really good piece. I really recommend it. But it was kind of how Abramovich has fallen. He kind of fell out of love with Chelsea when he couldn't really feel an identity in the team, and that's really important to him. So I think I agree that that Lampard needs to improve, show some kind of improvement. But I think it kind of fits with what was being said before about Lampard not being clear how he wants this team to play, and that might really affect him in terms of what Abramovich is thinking. I think Abramovich wants to look at his team and be like, right, it's clear how this team's going to be playing, and that's how we're going to get success.
It's a great point. And last question on this, Ali. Do you think that if Abramovich, because we know that he's very ruthless, we know that he's got rid of Mourinho, he's got rid of Conte, he's got rid of Ancelotti, top managers. Do you think that if Abramovich saw a beautiful identity and style of play, but Chelsea weren't quite obviously challenging for the title, that would actually be acceptable for him because of the fact as well it is Frank Lampard? Or do you think he's just going to be his ruthless self? Which I do think. I think no matter what, if Chelsea aren't performing, he's going to get the chop, because that's what Roman does.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think he'd be happy with a sort of finishing outside the top 4, for example. But maybe the Lampard thing gives him a little of extra leeway. I think Abramovich wants both, doesn't he? He wants to win, but he wants to see a tangible plan.
Yeah, I completely agree. Guys, let's go to the fixtures. I'm just going to ask you quickly, who do you think is going to win and some of the sort of key points about it. Kieran, I'm going to come to you first. We're going to start with the Merseyside derby, Everton, Liverpool, probably the most one-sided derby in all of the derbies. Every year, Liverpool are going to win, but things are a little bit different. Carlos rocked into town with his 3 brilliant signings. Everton look very, very good. How do you see this one playing out? You're on mute.
Yeah. I still think that Liverpool are going to win. There's just too much attacking talent there. While Everton have been very good, I think this is one of those games where Liverpool need to make a statement that they're still the best team in Merseyside, which I think most people would believe that that's still the case, even though Everton have started off very well. So I could see Liverpool trying to put in a quite dominant performance if they can against Everton. And if I was going for a scoreline, I'd probably say maybe 3-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting prediction. I think it'll be a bit closer. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Liverpool. Ali, do you agree with us? Or are you going to see Everton making a big shock and rocking the league, really?
I'm slightly concerned that this game is always, or not always, has been quite boring in the last few years. And I wonder if the desire not to lose might override the desire to win. I do think, though, what might be interesting to look out for is Aston Villa basically just targeted the space behind Trent Alexander-Arnold and Joe Gomez. In Richarlison, Everton have got the perfect player to do that. So I do think that might cause Liverpool a few problems. But I'm going to be really boring and go for a 1-0 Liverpool win.
No, I think that's some fantastic points, actually. I do agree on Liverpool seem to have, there is a way that you can expose them. It's definitely in that channel there, sort of behind Trent. Let's go. Ali, I'm going to come to you. City versus Arsenal, big game as well. If there's any time to play Man City, it's probably now, isn't it? I'm saying that, and now City probably going to tonk Arsenal 4-0.
This game, I've got absolutely no idea about, because Arsenal would lose this game 3-0, it seemed like every season, every game in every season, every competition. And then they went and won the FA Cup semi-final 2-0. That game just came out of absolutely nowhere. And City aren't playing very well at the moment. So I think Arsenal have got a chance in this one, but I'd go for a draw, maybe 1-1.
What's your view on Arteta, quickly?
I really like him. It's exactly the kind of thing that Arsenal needed. They needed some direction, and it's clear how he wants them to play when it wasn't clear under Unai Emery. And he's and that's what they wanted. They wanted someone young and with fresh ideas. So yeah, I think he's a really good fit for Arsenal.
I completely agree. I'm a fan of him. I think he's done some fantastic stuff for Arsenal. They're finally looking like they're not going to get smashed in every big game. He's got a plan. It might be, people do call him Mikel Mourinho, but it's working. That's all that matters. Kieran, your thoughts on City versus Arsenal?
Yeah, I have kind of a similar thought process when it comes to the Premier League. It seems like City just are able to kind of steamroll Arsenal every single time they play, but then it seems like when it's a cup game, suddenly Arsenal have this new plan that they're going to put out, or maybe that they just kind of do what the manager has asked them to do, and they don't make silly mistakes early on, because that's what you've seen in previous games against City, is that Arsenal make mistakes early in the game that cost them, and then they're having to deal with City just come at them every single time, and when Arsenal then have to try and attack, City just completely destroy them on the break. And I could see the same thing happening again. If City score early, I think it'll be a long day for Arsenal. But if they can remain compact in defence early on, there's no reason they can't get something out of the game. I just think that City are, because they've had a couple poor performances at the start of the season, I think that they're going to need to get it right. So I still think City are going to win. Again, I'd probably say 2-0.
Yeah, I think City might do it. So they need to. Otherwise, that's big problems for Guardiola. I'm going to come to you, Ali, for the final one. Spurs versus West Ham. West Ham are in good form, aren't they, at the moment? But I think, look, I predicted Tottenham to finish just outside the top 4 at the beginning of the season. I think Kieran was the same, but actually they're looking strong. I think this could be a tight one, but I think Spurs will win this 2-1. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Spurs will win. I just think they'll have too much in attack for West Ham's defence. West Ham will always get very up for this game, so it will be I think it will be a good game. But I think Spurs will win. Spurs have got something that they haven't had for quite a while. Weirdly, is loads of competition for places, and that's what seems to really be driving people on. You got. No one really is. I mean, Harry Kane and Son probably are going to keep their places, generally speaking, whatever happens. But otherwise, you've got competition everywhere for positions. And I think at the moment, you've got enough Tottenham players playing well that they'll have too much for West Ham.
Yeah, absolutely. You just have to look at the attacking options. Gareth Bale hasn't played yet. Steven Bergwijn, Lucas Moura, Dele Alli hasn't played. I want to ask you quickly about Dele Alli. What is going on that front?
I mean, he wants to play, and fair enough. He's been a key part of Tottenham for a long time. Mourinho wasn't happy with his reaction, the way he trained. We saw in the documentary he wasn't happy with that, and they kind of sort of clashed over a few things. But I do think that bringing Dele on at Old Trafford was a bit of an olive branch from Mourinho. It was kind of saying, look, you can still be part of this. You've just got to, the way the things are at Tottenham is it's a meritocracy, and you've got to prove your worth to the team. And he's going to make Dele do that. And I think he's got a part to play. Tottenham could play 55 games this season, 50, 60 games. And Dele Alli will be important to that.
Yeah, and it should be meritocracy, shouldn't it, really? I mean, that's how it should be at every club. Kieran, last final words, Spurs versus West Ham. Where are you going?
It's a tough one, because at the start of the season, I wasn't convinced by West Ham. But you saw them the last few games and they've been quite decent. But again, I think Spurs will probably have too much for them. If Spurs can score early, it's very similar to what I see in kind of that City Arsenal game. That if Spurs can get out of the blocks and score, West Ham will have to open up a little bit more. And then that's when I think you can kind of have a bit of an easier day for Spurs. But again, it kind of depends on how the team start in the game. If West Ham can go out and score an early goal and then just remain compact, it can be difficult for Spurs to kind of break them down. But it all comes down to that. I think Spurs win this one narrowly. I'm going to go with probably 2-1 on this one. Just again, it could just depend on how both teams start the game.
Yeah, and it seems like when Moisey works from home, then West Ham do a little bit better. So we'll see what happens. But look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Kieran, as always, my co-host. Ali, what a fantastic guest. Thank you very much for coming on. I hope you had a good time. Where can all the listeners find your great work?
Yeah, well, I write for The Coach's Voice. We do tons of interviews with managers. We do masterclasses where we get managers with in front of a tactics board talking about a particular game or particular team. We do analysis of matches, teams, players, coaches, all sorts. So yeah, please check it out.
Yeah, I love Coach's Voice. I always, when I need a little bit of sort of a tactical breakdown before I do a podcast, that is always the first site I go on. Ali, what I'll do is I'll get you to send me over a few of the links and I will put them in the description. Thank you very much again. Cheers, Kieran. To all the listeners, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We've got some fantastic guests. Hopefully, Ali can be back for a weekly show in a couple of weeks' time. And make sure you check out the Mental Health podcast because that is massive. Everyone needs to listen to that and to understand the implications of what we say online. So make sure you check that out and we will see